PR Connections Radio presents.
Welcome to Vegas Hockey Hub here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. Follow us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub and follow the show at PR Connections Radio. I also want to say congratulations to all of the winners of the NHL awards. That was very exciting. Of course, you had Zach Whitecloud, George McPhee, and Kelly McCrimmon representing your Vegas Golden Knights at the NHL awards. That was a fantastic ceremony. I give a lot of credit to all the people in production and everyone who was working on that NHL awards. And while we are going to be talking about Ivan Barbashev and how he was a perfect fit for your Vegas Golden Knights, how Ivan Barbashev turned out to be a fantastic trade deadline acquisition for your Vegas Golden Knights, I want to very quickly mention, by the way, there were a few Vegas Golden Knights players who received some votes during the NHL awards. Mark Stone, he received a few votes for the Selke Trophy. Not really surprising considering Mark Stone is one of the best two-way forwards in hockey. I mean, this was a guy who is one of the best defensive forwards in the NHL. So him receiving a few votes for the Selke Trophy would make a lot of sense. I think I even saw somewhere that Chandler Stevenson, I think he got 1 or 2 points, meaning that he did receive a little bit of votes as well for the Selke Trophy. And I got to give a lot of props to Chandler Stevenson alongside Mark Stone for receiving votes for the Selke Trophy. When it came to the Calder Trophy, Logan Thompson finished 8th in the voting for the Calder Trophy. I mean, this guy was an all-star goaltender. He was somebody who helped the Golden Knights in the first half of the year. So happy to see that he received some votes during the NHL awards. And Vegas Golden Knights head coach Bruce Cassidy finished 4th when it came to the Jack Adams Award. But I don't think he's worried about that at all. After all, instead of getting the Jack Adams Award, he got the best trophy in hockey, and that is the Stanley Cup. So with the NHL awards out of the way, it's time to talk about Ivan Barbashev. And more importantly, we're going to discuss how he was a perfect fit for your Vegas Golden Knights. So as we are talking about this here on Vegas Hockey Hub, I want to very quickly discuss what's going on with Ivan Barbashev because he's an interesting conversation. All right, technical difficulties. It happens, folks. We are live here on Vegas Hockey Hub, here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. But yeah, getting into Ivan Barbashev, I mean, this was a guy who totally helped the Vegas Golden Knights. He was someone who the Vegas Golden Knights acquired at the NHL trade deadline. And it was very interesting to see what happened because, yes, at the 2023 NHL trade deadline, he was acquired from the St. Louis Blues. And at the time, it was a question mark when it came to Ivan Barbashev. He was somebody who was going to be a rental for your Vegas Golden Knights. He was only going to be a half a year here in Vegas. And there was some question marks about where would he be in the lineup. Would he be on the top 6? Would he be in the middle 6? I mean, is this guy going to be a good addition for the Vegas Golden Knights? How is he going to blend in? How is his style of play going to fit? But more importantly, there was something a lot of people forgot to talk about, and it was Who did the Vegas Golden Knights have to give up for Ivan Barbashev? Who was their top prospect that Vegas had to give up in the deal? And that ended up being Zach Dean. Now, Zach Dean was their former first round pick of the Vegas Golden Knights. Zach Dean was on his last year playing for in the QMJHL of the Gatineau Olympiques. So when it came to Zach Dean, him being a top prospect here in Vegas, yes, it is unfortunate to see him go, but the end result was Ivan Barbashev helping your Vegas Golden Knights win a Stanley Cup. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the trade is, it doesn't matter what the acquisition is. In hockey, you have one end goal, and it is that right there. Your end goal is to win a Stanley Cup. So the Vegas Golden Knights did that at the trade deadline. They traded for Ivan Barbashev. They sent out Zach Dean. He is in the minor league system with St. Louis now. Best of luck to him. But Ivan Barbashev definitely helped out your Vegas Golden Knights. Ivan Barbashev, in the regular season, he actually did that pretty well in the NHL. In fact, this season, he did a good job for your Vegas Golden Knights. Not only did he play all 82 games when you take his stats in St. Louis and his stats in Vegas, he played all 82 games. He racked up 16 goals, had 29 assists, and 45 points for the Vegas Golden Knights and St. Louis Blues. Now, I have to mention this. The year before, Ivan Barbashev in 2021-2022, he had 60 points, 26 of them being goals in St. Louis. There was a belief at the NHL trade deadline that St. Louis was selling low on Ivan Barbashev. Based off of what he did the year before, his stats were down compared from 2021-2022. As a matter of fact, he only had 10 goals when St. Louis traded him to Vegas. So the belief was St. Louis was selling low on Ivan Barbashev instead of selling high like they could have done last year. But for the Vegas Golden Knights, that benefited them mightily because in the last 20 games of the regular season, he racked up 6 goals and had 16 points on the top two lines of the Vegas Golden Knights. Ivan Barbashev ended up being a very stellar player for your Vegas Golden Knights. He did a lot of things right here in Vegas in those last 20 games and helped the Vegas Golden Knights win a Pacific Division title and helped the Vegas Golden Knights get the number 1 spot in the Western Conference. Helped them get the best seed in the Pacific Division. But how did he do in the playoffs, you might ask? You know, you trade for him at the trade deadline. He had a solid last 20 games of the season. But how did he do when helping the Vegas Golden Knights get to a Stanley Cup final? Well, he did exceptional for your Vegas Golden Knights. Ivan Barbashev had 22 games. He played in all 22. Had 7 goals, 18 points, and a plus 14 in 18 penalty minutes. I also want to keep this in mind. Before this season, Ivan Barbashev was no mystery in the playoffs. All right, this wasn't his first dance. This wasn't his first rodeo in the NHL playoffs. As a matter of fact, this was his 5th appearance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Before this, his best performance in the Stanley Cup playoffs ended up being 3 goals, 6 points in 25 games, and that was when the St. Louis Blues won the 2019 Stanley Cup. So you take what Ivan Barbashev did, and he nearly tripled his previous run in the playoffs. In fact, his points leading in to the Stanley Cup playoffs, he only had 9 points before this playoff series. He had 18 with Vegas. So Ivan Barbashev was an absolute total fit for the Vegas Golden Knights. He was a perfect fit on that first line. His production showed it. Not only was he able to drop the gloves and defend his teammates if he had to, the point in reference is against Florida when Matthew Tkachuk was being a pest, or in Edmonton when Evander Kane was being a pest, or Dallas when Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin were being pests. I look at it and I look at Ivan Barbashev for what he did in the playoffs, and he did exceptionally well for your Vegas Golden Knights. He did what he had to do. So once again, Ivan Barbashev had a near perfect playoff run. 7 goals, 18 points, and 18 penalty minutes with a plus 14 plus minus. For reference, he only had 9 playoff points before coming to Vegas. In his run with St. Louis in 5 playoff appearances, he had only 9 points before this postseason. So for Ivan Barbashev, he is an example of a team selling low in St. Louis and Vegas capitalizing on it and making him go high in terms of value. So while we're talking about Ivan Barbashev here on the Vegas Hockey Hub, here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. We're talking about Ivan Barbashev and his impact on the Vegas Golden Knights and how he was a perfect fit for the Vegas Golden Knights and their championship run to the Stanley Cup in 2023. Something that gets really overlooked was his impact on the first line alongside Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault. Because not only did he get 11 assists in those 22 Stanley Cup games, but his presence on the first line was very noticeable. All right, when you're watching a guy in Ivan Barbashev, the way he would pass the puck around, the way he would create opportunities for his line mates, that was essential in Jack Eichel having a career performance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. His impact on the first line helped Jonathan Marchessault win the Conn Smythe Trophy as the playoff MVP. I mean, just for comparison, I mentioned how he had 18 points in this postseason. But a lot of people forget how did Jack Eichel and Jonathan Marchessault do in the postseason. So just to point out a reference, Jack Eichel in 22 games had 26 points for your Vegas Golden Knights. Jack Eichel averaged a point per game for the Vegas Golden Knights. There was an argument that Jack Eichel could have won MVP. He had a stellar argument. But for Jack Eichel, a lot of that had to benefit off of the opportunities that Ivan Barbashev created on the first line. The way he benefited from creating those opportunities, those 2-on-1, those 3-on-2, those select 1-on-1 opportunities where Barbashev would pass the puck all the way down the ice for Jack Eichel to create an opportunity. So for Ivan Barbashev, something that gets really overlooked was his impact on the first line with Jack Eichel, his impact on the first line with Jonathan Marchessault. So just for comparison, once again, Jack Eichel had 26 points in this postseason. Jonathan Marchessault, who was the Conn Smythe Trophy, the guy who was the playoff MVP, he had 25 points in this postseason in 22 games. Keep in mind, 13 of those 25 points were goals. So for Ivan Barbashev, his 18 points isn't just what he did, but you have to factor in the 22 points that, Jack Eichel had an assist. You also have to mention the 26 points for Jack Eichel and the 25 points for Jonathan Marchessault. Now, I mention all of this to get to a very good point. Ivan Barbashev is a pending free agent. And right now, his future in Vegas is unclear. There is no guarantee that Ivan Barbashev will be back here in Vegas. Once again, he was a rental. When the Vegas Golden Knights traded Zach Dean to St. Louis to get Ivan Barbashev, it was an understanding that you were trading for a rental. You were trading for a guy who was going to be at most 45 games in the Vegas Golden Knights uniform. Now, there has been plenty of reports that he wants an 8-year deal. There have been plenty of reports that the Vegas Golden Knights and Ivan Barbashev are in very way off when it comes to contract negotiations. So when you come to the Vegas Golden Knights organization, you ask them, what are you going to do with Ivan Barbashev? Two questions have to get brought up. What are you willing to pay him? And when are you going to decide if he's going to be a first-line guy again? Because a lot of people forget that if it hadn't have been for injuries, if it hadn't have been for a certain line having to be switched throughout the year, they wouldn't have actually gotten Ivan Barbashev to begin with. Because Mark Stone getting injured is what kind of allowed Ivan Barbashev to be traded here. If Chandler Stevenson wasn't an all-star and he hadn't been playing with Mark Stone for majority of the year, Chandler Stevenson would have been your first-line winger in Vegas in this postseason. As a matter of fact, Chandler Stevenson did spend a little bit of time on the first line. In fact, there was some shifting of the lines in that first series against Winnipeg. So, if you are the Vegas Golden Knights, those are the two most important questions you have to ask yourself. What amount are you willing to pay him, and where are you going to put him on the team? You know, what line are you going to put him in? What two teammates would you pair him with? Because to answer the first part, what are you willing to pay him? That depends on how much cap space the Vegas Golden Knights are going to have. We know that the Vegas Golden Knights have a little over $3 million in cap space. And Robin Lehner being on long-term IR once again for an entire season, yes, there is some leverage there. There is some leeway there. But when it comes to Ivan Barbashev wanting an 8-year deal, it really depends on how much he wants. If it's an 8x5, that sounds a lot better. But if it's an 8x6, if it's an 8x7, that's going to be a little bit too much for the Vegas Golden Knights. So to answer the what question, it just really depends on how much money Ivan Barbashev's agent and his camp wants. If it's an 8x5, I would recommend doing it. All right, if I'm Kelly McCrimmon, if I'm George McPhee, if I'm Bill Foley, if it's an 8x5, which is an 8-year by $5 million per, if that is the offer that you would be giving him, I would recommend doing it. And then see what the rest of the NHL free agency has to come up with. All right. I would see what the rest of the league is willing to offer him. Because if there's a team that's willing to offer him $6 million, there's a team that's willing to offer him $7 million, then you gladly shake hands and you part ways. But if you can get him for around $5.5 million per year, I would recommend Vegas going out and doing that. Because he was your first line forward, he was a top line winger, and he's somebody that can help out Vegas long term. The second question I asked is, where are you going to put him if you re-sign him? Because that first line is going to be incredibly difficult for the Vegas Golden Knights. Because that first line is going to be jam-packed full of talent. All right, keep in mind that Jack Eichel and Mark Stone are most likely going to be your first-line mates. Okay, Jack Eichel, he's your best center. He is a guy that is going to be your best center on the team. You're going to have him there. Mark Stone is the captain of the team. He is one of the best players in the NHL, one of the best defensive forwards in the league. you need to have him on your first line. So if you re-sign Barbashev for sake of the argument, are you going to put him on the same line with Eichel and Stone? Or is Mark Stone going to request to have Chandler Stevenson be at left wing? Because we know the chemistry that Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone have built up the past 3 years. So if Chandler Stevenson goes to the first line, well, then what are you going to do next? Because the second line is most likely going to be the KSM line. It's going to be William Karlsson, Riley Smith, and Jonathan Marchessault. If it hadn't been for the playoff injuries and all of the stuff that happened in the postseason, Smith, Marchessault, and Karlsson would have been on the same line once again. And that's actually the way it would have been like it was the last 5 years. So your second line is most likely going to be the same. I don't see a reason why it would change. So if you re-sign Barbashev, are you going to have him be on your middle six? Is he going to be a third line player for the Vegas Golden Knights? Because I sincerely doubt that a guy of his talent and a guy who's going to get paid very handsomely by the Vegas Golden Knights or by another organization, I highly doubt that he is going to be on the third line getting paid $5 million per. And besides, who would be on your third line anyway? Because there's been a lot of talk about elevating that fourth line and creating that as your third line, having it be Carrier, Waugh, and Kolazar. Now, Carrier, Waugh, and Kolazar have been your fourth line for the last 3 seasons. But considering that you have Paul Cotter, considering you have Michael Amadio, do you have those guys be on your fourth line, or do you be a little bit creative and do you have Paul Cotter, Michael Amadio, and have somebody from the AHL, like maybe Pavel Dorofeev, be on your third line and keep Kolazar, keep Carrier, and keep Waugh on your fourth line? Or do you elevate the fourth line, put it as your third line, and then have your 3 young players be on line 4? Also, keep in mind that the Vegas Golden Knights have restricted free agency with Pavel Dorofeev and with Brett Howden. So depending on what they do with Dorofeev and depending on what they do with Howden, you could maybe see a Paul Cotter, Brett Howden, Michael Amadio third line, and then you have Keegan Kolazar, William Carrier, and Nick Waugh on line 4. So even with all of that I just said, it really makes me question, what are you going to do with Barbashev if you re-sign him? Where are you going to put him if you re-sign him? Because I really don't know where you would fit him in terms of the lineup. Because like I said, if Eichel and Stone are your first line, which they are most likely going to be, Chandler Stevenson is going to be on your first line. He has developed a relationship with Mark Stone. He's been doing that since 2020. You're not going to break up Stevenson and Stone unless you have a valid reason as to why you're going to. The second line, unless you have something similar to what happened in the postseason, you have Smith, you have Karlsson, and you have Marchessault. You are going to keep that line together because for 6 seasons, they have been together. They have been on the same unit. So if you are the Vegas Golden Knights, you have to make a very important decision. Do I re-sign Barbashev and put him on the first line with Eichel and Stone? Or do I re-sign Barbashev and put him on the third line with maybe somebody like Howden and Amadio? Or maybe put him on the third line and have him be with the 2 young guys in Cotter and Dorofeev. Because when it comes to Ivan Barbashev, the where you're going to put him question is very valuable and a really important question. because he is your first line winger in this postseason. But Chandler Stevenson and Mark Stone were on the third line in this postseason. Next year, Mark Stone's not going to be on the third line anymore. Chandler Stevenson was an all-star. He does not need to be on the third line anymore. So, to really answer the question, should the Golden Knights re-sign Ivan Barbashev? And my answer to you is no. He did a stellar job in the postseason. He did a fantastic job in the regular season in that small 20-game scale. But if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, unless you're willing to trade away an Alec Martinez, unless you're willing to trade away one of your valuable forwards to free up cap space to make Ivan Barbashev a reality, you are fine without Ivan Barbashev. It's going to hurt losing him, but he was only here for half a year. He won you a Stanley Cup. He got you to the promised land, and now it is time for him to get his bag. It is time for Ivan Barbashev to cash in and get his money. So if I'm the Vegas Golden Knights, if I'm the general manager, if I'm Kelly McCrimmon, I'm letting Ivan Barbashev go, and I'm letting him sign an 8x6. If I'm the Vegas Golden Knights, I will take my money, re-sign Aiden Hill, bring back Brett Howden, and I would focus on building the roster from within and keeping the guys you have now. Ivan Barbashev will always be known as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights, as a Stanley Cup champion. But do the Vegas Golden Knights need to resign him long term? My answer is no. I believe that if he goes somewhere else, they will give him more money, they will give him a top-line production, and they will be able to give him more than what the Vegas Golden Knights can offer him here in Vegas long term. So I want to know from all the people watching around the world, what do you think about Ivan Barbashev? Should the Vegas Golden Knights re-sign Ivan Barbashev? Let me know in the comments down below. And for all the people watching around the world, go to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on notification bell so you don't miss any episode of Vegas Hockey Hub. And if you are on prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media, go to PR Connections Radio, hit the like button, turn on notifications so you don't miss any show that is on the network. I want to give a quick plug, by the way, to everyone on the network. Crypto and Cash, Brett and Dan, they put out a fantastic show. I highly recommend watching them on Mondays. On Tuesdays, you have The Love of Business, Edgar, Devin. Those guys are incredible. If you love watching stuff about business, go check out The Love of Business on Tuesdays. You also have Cozy Stone. She is incredible. I love her interview skills. I wish I was on the same level as her when it comes to the way she does interviews. She does a fantastic job. And Shirley, I know she makes content. And Shirley, I always love her videos. She's incredible. And I also want to give credit to Brian Gardner for We Got the Power on Fridays. So for everyone on PR Connections Radio, I highly respect them. I like being on this network. I like being alongside Dana and Guy. You guys are working behind the scenes, doing what you guys are doing. It's incredible. So until next time, I'm your host, Ian Rachiele. This was another edition of Vegas Hockey Hub. Follow us on social media at Vegas Hockey Hub and follow your host at Ian Rachiele 18. So until next time, continue watching hockey, go support junior hockey, and go Knights go! We are the Stanley Cup champions.